Okay, what's up, everybody? This is Drew from Drew Does Tech, and I'm here with another video for you today. On my last video, some folks were commenting that they were having problems with running games on Linux. And I know there's tons of content out there about gaming on Linux and whatnot. There's tons of content about everything out there on YouTube. But I thought that I would demonstrate today a few use cases with Linux, primarily with setting up games in Linux. If you are new to Linux and you're looking for something to help you with gaming, like I said, there are many Linux distributions out there that are purpose built for many different things. Nobara, the system I use, is one that does come tailor fit for gaming. But if you are new to Linux, I would recommend something that's a little more beginner friendly, like maybe Bazite. Um, it's also tailor made for gaming, so a lot of the stuff you need is going to be available to you out of the box. But I'm going to start with Steam, just because Steam is the most popular way that people play PC games. Um, and also, it's the primary way I utilize to access non Steam games on Linux. And I'll get to that in a little bit. So, what you're seeing here is a snapshot of my library and some of my most recent games. I bought Silksong, but I haven't started it yet because I realized after I bought it, I'd never actually finished Hollow Knight. So I've been working my way through that lately. Um, but Valve does offer a native Linux version of Steam, and Valve and Steam are very pro Linux. So there are a lot of tools. A lot of the processes have been streamlined thanks to Steam and Valve and some other efforts from some other parts of the open source community. So as I previously mentioned in my last video, it is possible to run Windows applications on Linux, but it requires some tooling. One of those tools being a compatibility tool called Wine, which basically what that does is it translates Windows calls into Linux calls and vice versa, so that a Windows game can run on a Linux system. And so that's something people have been using for years to make Windows programs work on Linux. But there's a fork of Wine that has been developed with Valve uh, as a fork of Wine called Proton, and that is tooled specifically for gaming. Wine can handle a variety of applications, but Proton is tooled specifically for gaming. Valve has their own in-house Proton that they make. There are community versions of Proton as well. But being that it's sourced from Valve, if you're playing games in Steam, it's pretty easy to work with. Um, just a quick tip, um, in your settings, I don't remember exactly where it is, but there is an option to display Steam Deck compatibility ratings on game screens. So as I'm thumbing over these games, if you look in the lower right of each thumbnail, you'll see a certain type of icon. So that one has a green check mark. That one has a yellow with a little eye in it for information. This one has a no-go symbol, and this one has also a green check mark. So when Valve released the Steam Deck, they created a Steam Deck compatibility system to make it easier for players to identify games that will run well on the Steam Deck without any additional tweaking required. I will say that I personally don't really. I use these kind of as a cautionary guideline more than anything, but I don't abide by them. Like this says the Borderlands 4 is unsupported, but I play Borderlands 4 on here all the time. So I think this is mostly just for casual people who don't really tool around or tinker around with stuff. This is basically warning them that no, you can't play this game unless you want to tinker. But that's okay. It's not as scary as it sounds. This game will run. This game is playable, but there's some caveats. So the reason why I recommend activating that is because The same general rules apply to Linux desktop as far as the Steam Deck rating is going here. In that, if it says it's Steam Deck verified, it will absolutely run on Linux. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, no issues, no tooling required. It should just go. This will go, but it may not run smoothly. There may be issues that can be corrected with compatibility tools. This game actually will run with compatibility tools. It just probably doesn't run at all without compatibility tools, and that's why it has that. So basically, there's not really a whole lot you need to do for the most part outside of just downloading Steam. You can access some outside Proton tools and whatnot if you want, but like I said, Valve provides a in-house Proton um, as part of their Gaming on Linux initiative. But there is also a utility you can get on Linux, which I have here called Proton Plus. And I do use that one because this allows you to access other community made Proton utility tools, including Steam Tinker Launch. And also, it allows you to access compatibility tools related to Lutris, which is something else we'll get into later. But aside from the regular built-in Steam stuff, I use the GE Proton compatibility tools. Oh, it looks like he released a new one. I'll download that later. So I use these in addition to the normal, or I shouldn't say normal, but the in-house Steam Proton tools. So that's why I have Proton Plus, because it allows me to access those. And then how you use those and what they're for is, so if I want to play Hollow Knight here, but maybe Hollow Knight doesn't run well on Linux, or I'm having issues running it on Linux and I want to try and assist it in running with a compatibility tool, you just go to the little gear over here. You go down to properties, and there's a tab here that says compatibility, and you click on that. Now this game actually runs native on Linux, so I'm not actually forcing it to use any kind of compatibility tools here at all. So let me go to a game that I know does use compatibility tools. Dead Island 2 is a perfect example. I was just showing on the other screen that it's playable, but not verified. So this game would run better with compatibility tools than without. So if we go over here, again, we just go to the gear, go to properties, click on compatibility. I already have it using a compatibility tool here, but what you would do is just check this box to force it to use a compatibility tool. And then you would use this drop down to choose your compatibility tool. And so some of these are already installed in without me having done anything extra. Like this Umu, I don't know if that's actually Valve or if it came from somewhere else, but I didn't install it knowingly. Proton Hotfix, Proton Experimental, anything that just is labeled Proton with some designation after it. These are the in-house Steam Valve developed Proton tools. And then these are the GE Proton tools that I have installed and that Steam has ready to go. I can probably trim off these version 9 ones because we're well into version 10 now. And these are going to be all old and outdated. So I can actually go into this tool and I can delete those older unused compatibility tools which I will do at a later date. I'm not going to worry about it right now, but that is essentially all you really have to do as far as getting a Proton tool assigned to your game so that it will launch. There are other tools you can utilize as well to enhance your gaming experience on Linux. But while we're still on the topic of Proton, I will also say that another good resource to have is a website called ProtonDB. So this site tracks games on Linux and if they're playable or not, and if the community has required any tweaking to get them to play or anything like that. So you can just go up here to the search bar, type in the name of any game. We'll say What's the new Battlefield 6? We'll say, is Battlefield 6 playable on Linux? So this here says it's borked, and I already knew it was borked when I searched. But that's because of anti-cheat, which is another topic for this video that we'll get into later. So yeah, as you can see here, because of the anti-cheat, it doesn't run on Linux. And like I said, that's another thing we're going to get into here. But let me look for a game that I know will work. So let's say Clair Obscure. Expedition 33, Platinum status. Runs perfectly right out of the box. It's rated playable, but as you can see, nobody really has any issues with it. Runs right out of the box. Well, this guy said they did some extra stuff, but for the most part, runs just fine. So this is another good resource to have if you're going to game on Linux, just to give you information on the viability of playing a game. And it has different categories here: PC, Steam Deck, Chrome OS. So if you're looking for specifically information on the Steam Deck, you can click here. Although, like I said, it's generally speaking pretty much the same experience between Steam Deck and Linux desktop in terms of the game being playable or not. So that is a good resource to have for that. So some other things to look out for. Before we move on to other like precautionary stuff, I'll point out something here that you can also use. Um, you don't have to, but like if you look at any gameplay footage on my gameplay channel, I always have up in the corner like running stats on my system, like my CPU usage, GPU usage, temps, all that stuff. That's a utility called Mango HUD. And then this is something else I'll talk about here in a second, this stuff here. But this is a section called launch options. So you can give like command arguments to the game that it will use when it launches, and you can put them in here. And this may be a little more advanced than what some people are used to, but there's plenty of instructions on Reddit and places like that on how to do something like this if you want to explore it, but you're not familiar with how it works. Um, but you just put a list of commands in here and then just end it with this little command. That's what tells it that's the end of the command string. So yes, this the running live stats is Mango HUD, and then in my experience, even though KDE does say that they can support HDR with Wayland and whatnot, which is a window manager. I have an HDR monitor, but I find that if I want to take advantage of HDR in my games, I can't just launch them and let them run natively because the system will not allow me to enable HDR in the settings, even though I have HDR enabled in my desktop settings. So then that's where this game scope comes in. This is like another window manager within the system that's related to gaming, and you can give it specific instructions related to like resolution, full screen, all of that. So this game scope here basically is just telling Steam we're going to launch game scope with the following conditions. So this flag W is the width of the display, which is 2560. And then this flag H is the height, which is 1440 because I'm using a 2560 by 1440 display. This F flag just tells it to run the game in full screen. And then this all here is how we get to use HDR in the game settings. Now, Hollow Knight doesn't actually have HDR, but it works in GameScope, and I like GameScope, so there you go. Not all games behave well in GameScope. Sometimes you'll have certain issues, and they might be issues you can just work around. They might be issues that ruin the experience. Like, for example, here with Hollow Knight, even though it doesn't really have HDR as an option, I do still like using GameScope for a variety of reasons. So I do still run the game in GameScope, and I use these same flags with every game I run in GameScope. So that's not the issue. But what the issue is with Hollow Knight is if I'm playing Hollow Knight within GameScope and I walk away from my computer for a moment, I'm playing with a controller. If my controller goes to sleep for any reason, when I re-wake it up, it will still, for the most part, work. But it no longer responds to the joysticks. I can only navigate menus with the D-pad. So if I want the full functionality of my controller, I have to quit the game and relaunch it. So that's a little bit of an inconvenience. I could get around that by just not using GameScope, honestly. Maybe I'll try it without GameScope because, like I said, it doesn't have HDR. The only important thing really out of here for me is Mango Hut. I always run Mango Hut on any game I'm running because it gives me live stats of my CPU, GPU, my memory, all my system stuff, my frame times, my frame rate, all that good stuff. So I always use Mango Hut. GameScope is optional. Some games might not play nice with it. Ghost of Tsushima is a good example of that. I cannot run Ghost of Tsushima inside Mango or inside GameScope, even if I want to. I have it set for GameScope here, but I probably should just delete that because anytime I try to run it in GameScope, it will ultimately at some point crash. Whereas it will not crash if I do not run it within GameScope, which sucks because I actually can use HDR on Ghost of Tsushima, but I can't because it doesn't play nice with GameScope. But most games will run just fine on Linux. In fact, a lot of them run very well. Um, Cyberpunk 2077 is one that runs very well. I believe it's verified. I might still have it. Nope, I'm not even using compatibility tools. It is absolutely verified. I just have it skip the. This is another launch command you can use. I just have it skip the CD Project Red, the Red launcher. It just goes straight to the game. It doesn't make me go through the Red launcher before starting the game. So that's another good one to use. Launcher skip. So, yes, anti-cheat is another thing I wanted to talk about. But first, I want to talk more about. No, I'll talk about anti-cheat, and then we'll talk more about other tools. So that is one thing that will hamper you with certain games, as you saw earlier with the Battlefield 6 example. The only games you're really not going to be able to play on Linux in 2025 and beyond are games that utilize kernel level anti-cheat. I want to specify that because there are games that utilize anti-cheat systems on Linux that run just fine on Linux. The issue is games that utilize a kernel level anti-cheat because Linux is very privacy based and does not like it when you intrude its kernel. And also because playing on Linux requires the use of compatibility tools, those kernel level anti cheats will often false flag those compatibility tools as cheats, and then you'll find yourself catching a ban for just trying to play your game. So that's going to eliminate games like Battlefield. I think Call of Duty might work. Uh, no, it probably uses anti-cheat as well. Let's double check. I don't even know what the newest Call of Duty is, but we can just search Call of Duty and it should give us a list of Call of Duty games. Okay, so Modern Warfare works. So it looks like these older Call of Duties work. But some of the newer ones do not, and I'm guessing it's because they utilize a kernel level anti-cheat. Okay, that's the Mac edition, and it's awaiting further reporting. Actually, that looks like the original COD. No, that's not original. That's too new of artwork. Why is it just called Call of Duty? I don't know. I don't follow Call of Duty, but as you can see, there are a list of Call of Duty games that will play and a list that will not. And I'm willing to bet that all the ones that do not utilize some form of kernel level anti-cheat, and that is why. Other games that you're gonna not be able to really run on Linux are gonna be games like Apex Legends, uh, recently, when I say recently, like within 2024-ish to now, Grand Theft Auto Online no longer works on Linux because 2K implemented a kernel level anti cheat into that. Um, and there's a few other games like that that will not work on Linux. Now, that being said, if you like Grand Theft Auto 5, and that's not contingent on the online, maybe you just like playing the single player sandbox mode, that will work on Linux. It's only the online that will not because of the kernel level anti cheat. Um, and that is 100% a publisher developer decision on that, because it's not that the technology does not exist. As I mentioned before, there are games utilizing anti cheat that work on Linux. Perfect example being Elden Ring. Elden Ring utilizes kernel or easy anti cheat, I believe, but it works on Linux, and that's because all they have to do, they being the publisher, developer, whoever's implementing the system, um, contact the vendor of that anti-cheat software and just ask them to enable Linux compatibility. That's all you got to do. It's literally just like a flip of a switch, and it will run on Linux. It's just that some people do not want to afford the game to run on Linux. I mean, as far as the gaming and, well, desktop and PC community in general goes, the Windows crowd is far larger than the Linux crowd, and it's not necessarily worth it to some companies to appease that small of a demographic. So they just don't care and they don't do it. Others want the game to be available in as many places as possible, and they will utilize the less invasive, albeit probably less effective, um, anti cheat that works on Linux. So that's something to be aware of as well, is to just, if there's certain games that you really like to play that you currently play on Windows and you're thinking about utilizing Linux gaming, go to ProtonDB, research those games, find out if they'll work or not for you, and decide whether or not that is a fair trade for you. That would be my recommendation there. So you also can run non-Steam stuff. It's just Steam is the easiest path, the path of least resistance, because it's native. It's built with Linux in mind. But there are other tools you can utilize. One of them being this Lutris. I don't have anything in here because I don't use Lutris. It just comes ready to go installed on this distribution. But basically what Lutris does is it helps you find launchers and other tools needed to run games on Linux, and it can utilize other emulators as well, like Here's Wine, PCSX2, etc., etc. But if a game you're trying to launch on on Linux requires some kind of specific launcher, like GOG, Epic, EA, Ubisoft, whatever, this tool will grab those launchers, required launchers for you, and set everything up for you in here. Um, and then you may have to tweak the wine settings, but usually it works just fine, ready to go. Um, and then this is a way for you to access non-Steam games. I will admit that I have tried to set up Lutris in the past. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I don't have the greatest luck with it. And before I started gaming on desktop Linux, I was already gaming on Steam Deck Linux. And so I kind of just utilized the same um, process here that I used for that, in that I have BattleNet games. I have the BattleNet version of Diablo 4, and then I also have Diablo 2 and 3. And I just have BattleNet added as a non Steam game to Steam. with compatibility tools assigned to it and whatnot. But I have Battle hidden only because I'm weird, and I could just run Battle and let Battle be Battle, and I could just launch Battle and run my games from Battle, and I would have a little Battle entry right here in my library. But because I like seeing games and tiles and stuff, what I actually did was I repeated the process multiple times um, to actually add multiple instances that for each of these games. So, I mean, really, each of these is effectively just the same thing as that other battle. Like, these are just battle instances. They're just battle instances that are set up directly for these three games. But if I launch any one of these, it's just going to launch battle. And from there, I can play any one of these games. I could go here, I could tell it I'm playing Diablo 4, but then when battle loads up, I could actually launch Diablo 2. Because it's effectively the same thing. I just did it in triplicate because I wanted to create the illusion that I had these games here in my library, even though it's just battle, and I'm launching these games through battle. Um, so that's how I do it. But Lutris is designed to help you grab games that are outside of the Steam ecosystem and set them up to play. But you also can just piggyback it off of Steam as adding it as a non-Steam game. So I did that. I added the battle. What I did actually, it's a very convoluted process, but I didn't mind the extra steps because I'm weird. I wanted everything right here in Steam. Um, but basically, you have to add the the BattleNet installer to Steam as a non-Steam game, and then run it with Proton so that it will actually install Battle. Um, and then once you have Battle installed and running in Steam as a non-Steam game, then from there you can launch it with Proton and you can play any of your Battle games. It's really not necessary to go through all the trouble I did to set it up this way, but if you did want to, you would effectively just repeat the process, but instead of adding Battle to your library 3 times, you would be adding the Diablo 2 games, the Diablo 3 game, the Diablo 4 game to your Steam library as a non-Steam game, but effectively all that does is it installs the Battle launcher for that game. So literally this is just 3 instances of Battle. Um, so, but you would do that with the game files, and then it would effectively install the Diablo 4 version of Battle, the Diablo 3 version of Battle, the Diablo 2 version of Battle, but they're all Battle. So it's you, like I said, you don't have to make it that complicated. That's just one of my quirks. So yes, you can piggyback everything through Steam. You can use Lutris. There's also a launcher called Heroic that I believe can manage most non-Steam launchers like Epic and Uplay or UbiConnect or whatever that's called now. And the Epic launcher and all that. But Lutris does all that too. So that's just some information for you on how to run something through um, Linux if you're new to Linux gaming. Actually, let me go ahead and see if one of those Diablo instances will launch. I haven't done it in a while, so I might need to update the compatibility tools, or I might need to re-authenticate with Battle, but we'll see. Nope, it appears to be working, albeit a little slow, but I am recording. All right, so yeah, here we go. I told it to quote unquote, I don't care about Outer Worlds. Oh, okay, yeah, and Diablo 4 and they say handheld optimized. How cute. Um, so Diablo 2 and 4 both have pending updates. Okay, BattleNet has a required update. Restart now. So here we go. And then I can just go in here and I can just update Diablo 2. And then when that's done, I can do the same thing for Diablo 4. So I can fully manage all my battle stuff right here. And it all runs just fine, and I'm just running it with compatibility tools through Steam. Not using Lutris or Heroic or any of that other stuff, just plain old Steam and Proton. So that's pretty much everything I can think of as far as getting you started with playing games on Steam. Um, Certainly, if you have any questions or comments, just leave them on the video. And obviously, I pay attention to them because I saw that comment on the other video and decided to make this video. So, thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you next time.